Page 70, the top of the page. Ve'ein notlim reshut. The Mishnah said that the two people basically may not receive rights in a domain to allow to carry in that yard. So the Gemara asked Lamali, why the Mishnah said it? That they said it because even in order for the resident of the courtyard say to one of the two that did not establish an Eruv, acquire our right on the conditions that you transfer it, it's not going to work. So be'amina abai meraba. Now this is the key point here in regards to bitul reshut, to annulling the rights. He says chamisha sheshurim bechatzer echad. If you have 5 people in one yard, v'shachar echad mehem v'lo irav, one of them forgot to make the eruv. כשהוא מבטל רשותו צריך לבטל לכל אחד ואחד או לא? The big question is, when someone annulling his right, should he go specifically to 5 others? 5 is just an example, it's not necessarily 5. You need to go to each of them and say, I'm annulling my right to you, or it's enough that he make a statement to one guy and that included everyone else. So the Meiri explained, the key point is, in his heart, he needs to annul for everyone, or he needs to make a declaration specific in his expression. אמר לי רבה say to Abaye, צריך לבטל לכל אחד ואחד. He needs to say it clearly, unequivocally, to each and everyone, and that's by the way that Be'u Halacha explains. 80. Now we ask 7 different situations of bitul reshut. 1, if there are 3 people in the living in one domain, and only 2 make the eruv. אחד שלא עירב נותן רשותו לאחד שעירב. Meaning, if you have 3, one of them did not make the eruv. So he basically give the right to one who didn't, one of those who make the eruv, give the rights to another one. One did not have an eruv, give the right over the one who have a eruv, in order to allow them to carry in the yard between the home and the yard. If there are 3, 2 make eruv, 1 law and 1 not. So he needs to give the right to one who didn't do the eruv. If there are 4 people, 4 tenants, or 4 people live in that yard, and only 2 of them make the eruv, which means the other 2 not, they have to give the right to the other 2 that already established an eruv in order to carry from their domain to the yard. Or the number 4, if there are 3 people that live in that yard that not make a eruv at all, 2 of them give it to one of them, as we explained yesterday, the day before yesterday, but that doing so, they're allowed to carry. But if one of those people already established an eruv cannot give his right to someone who did not make the eruv in order for him to carry to the yard, because his fellow that he didn't make the eruv together, he didn't renounce his right over his domain. Number 6, for out of 4 people in the yard, 2 that make eruv cannot give it to the other 2 that the eruv, because they forbid it to each other. Also 2 out of 4 cannot make the eruv for the other 2 that they didn't do it. The same reason. One who didn't make the eruv give his right to one who eruv. So Abaye said, give me an example, what does that apply? He said, if it's now 3rd person in that yard, what does that mean to one who make the eruv? He said, to whom he is collaborate, with whom he is joined with the eruv. It's prior, it have to have an inquiry, the ika acharina badeda, they have to have another fellow with them in the yard. Uktane le'echad she'irav. We learn that it's enough for the one who did not annul his right to one of the 2 that make the eruv together with him, because one who annul his right needs to do it individually to everyone in his domain. Ve'Rabbah, how the Rabbah explained this braita? Rabbah said, Hacha b'may askinan, who we are talking here, the hava umit. It was one person in that yard before Shabbat, together with the others, but unfortunately he passed during Shabbat. So it's important to know that there are 3 schools of thought among the Mefarshim what happened. Let's start with the Ritva. The Ritva said that it was a convert, someone who converted to Judaism. He had no hairs, so because of that he left. It's in that sense the one who was a recipient. It's like hefker, whatever left. Another option, they said that the Tosfot said that the one who make the Eruv together with the deceased is the one who was basically inherited here. It's not necessarily his son himself. Rashi said, he has said that it has to be a situation that it's a traveler, that during Shabbat they are in a place somehow outside of the city, and they put a partition, a mechitzot, that looks like a yard, and then they build a tent. So it means that it's not a permanent residence that he inherited here. When you talk about inquiring of Eruv, it's basically a temporarily a travelers. If you talk about the third person that make the Eruv together in the past, let's see the second part, the second clause of the Braita. The one who make the Eruv should not join with them to make Eruv in order to allow his yard. Why? Because his fellow that make the Eruv together and not annul his right over the property still forbid this yard by the fact that he not make the Eruv. We have a Dahava Umid. If you talk about the third person that was joined with them and he passed, and now you have only two, Amailo, why all the yard is not allowed by annulling one of them to one another, because they have only two tenants in that yard, so the annulment, the renouncement, it's effective. Obvious. The 80 that you have the third tenant, the third person is around. Because the second part of the Braita, it's talking about the third tenant that his Eruv is existed. So the first part in the Braita that one of them renounce his right to the other two, it's talking about the third tenant that also make the Eruv together. So now, and it's contrary to what Rabbah said. So the Gemara responds and said, Midi Irya, this is the proof. Which means each one study according to his understanding, which means one hold in the sense that the third tenant passed, and the second part speak about that is still around the third person that make the Eruv. Teida, you should know, the Ktane Sefer the Reisha, because we learn at the second part of the first section of the Braita, the two people that did not participate in Eruv should give their right to the other two that making the Eruv. So you would derive from that they are the only people who annul l'shnaim ein le'echad lo. So it means that renunciation apply only in the case of two, but if it's one, not. So here basically you have a proof to what Rabbah said, that the one who makes the renunciation of his right to annul it to everybody else in this yard, it's apply. You don't need to have any extra effort to anybody else, and especially at the time of the renunciation, the third tenant already passed while he already made the Eruv. Ve'abaye Amar. So now Abaye he can say, what is the meaning of the Braita when they use the term two people that make a Eruv, they give it to the other two that make it Eruv? Le'echad mishnayim. That's applied to one of the two, but it doesn't need to make the annulments for both of them. Yachei didn't le'echad sherav or le'echad shelo erav. You should say only to one person who make the Eruv, and not and basically one who established an Eruv or in the favor of residents who did not establish an Eruv, from which one would understand that there are two present, for otherwise there could be no Eruv. So the Gemara concluded and said, Kashya, it's really difficult according to Abaye opinions, and it's not completely refute his opinion, because some of the Geonim said, like Rosh and Brachot and the Rashbam, Rabbi Yochanan said it's not total refutations, but here You can go in many different directions. You can say that it's only applied to one person that make it, to the one person that make the Eruv, one person make the renunciation, etc. So we said that one resident of the courtyard who did not establish an Eruv may renounce his right in favor to one who established an Eruv. So they said, so according to Abaye, the third person, the third tenant, וכמה שמלן, then צריך לבטל רשות לכל אחד ואחד. It's going to derive from this that the people in that yard doesn't need to make the renunciation of their rights individually. לרבא דאבה ומית, according to Rabbi is a third person past, that ולא גזוז דין דעתי. So the rabbis did not put this gzeira, this decree. Why? Because due to the concern that sometimes that other person is still present. So in my book, ביאורה כלומר ברש"י על הש"ס, I explained this Rashi, that Rashi here during כלומר. I wish to have more time. Anyway, you're welcome to go there and see the explanation. The second part, ושניים שעירבו נותנים רשותם לאחד שלא עירב. And we said further in the Braitat, similarly, two courtyard residents who did not establish an Eruv may renounce their rights in the courtyard in the favor of two residents who establish an Eruv. So they said, Pshita, that's obvious. So maybe because he didn't make an Eruv, we should make some type of fine in that sense that even they make renunciation, his yard cannot be used. Kamash Melan, the Braita want to tell us that the sages did not put a special fine with him, and this renunciation is effective. The third part is so you have established two courtyard residents who establish Eruv may renounce the right to the courtyard in the favor of one who did not establish an Eruv. So they said Rabat and Seifa. So according to the Rabbah, so how do you understand the second clause of the Braita? Legaluye reisha, in order to elaborate, to clarify the first part of the Braita. Le'abaye, shnayim shelo irvu tzricha lei. According to Abaye, shnayim shelo irvu tzricha lei. You need to say it. Why? Because they can basically have the ability to renounce their right over their property. Sakra Dachamena Yomei said that this law, that two people that did not make a Eruv, from one who did not make a Eruv, that maybe we put this decree, that it could enter to a mind that say that he could issue a decree determining that the two residents who did not establish an Eruv may not renounce their right in favor of the two residents who established their Eruv. Why? Lest the two who were established in Eruv come to renounce their right in favor of the two that did not. So Kamash Manan, the Braita come to teach us, no, that we do not issue such a decree. Then we said, or le'echad shelo irav. So the fourth statement here, they said that they apply that two people give their right to one who did not make an Eruv, establish an Eruv, lamali. Why we need to say, why we need this addition? מהו לתימני מילי אחד בקצתם ירבו וחצתם לא ירבו אבל אחד כולם לא ירבו לכנסינו may you say that if only some of them did Eruv and some not, so you go by that, but if everybody did not make the Eruv, so you should make a fine, you give some punishment to them in a sense that the renunciation will not be effective. Why? כדי שלא תשתכח תורת Eruv. We should penalize them by not allowing renunciation, so that the halachic category of Eruv should not be forgotten by those who come after them. So the Kamash Melan, so the Braita want to tell us that you shouldn't worry about it. Anyway, that those who make renunciation cannot carry in the yard, and most probably in the upcoming Shabbatot they want to do it in order for everyone to carry. So it's no serious concern that they depend upon this bitul reshuyot. That's the point of view of the Ritva, by the way. You're welcome to read him. It's a long explanation by the Ritva. But we say also that one courtyard resident who did establish an Eruv may not renounce his right in a courtyard in favor of one who did not establish an Eruv. לאביי תנא סיפא לגלויי רישא, לרבי תנא רישא תנא סיפא. According to Abaye, that is the second part of the Braita, is in order to elaborate the first part. So meaning that one person that make an Eruv, he give it to the one who make an Eruv. But one, according to Rabbah, the one who teach the first part, Tana Reisha, that taught the first clause in a certain style, he's also taught the later clause in that same style, but no halachic conclusion can be granted from here. The sixth part, but not two residents who establish an Eruv renounce their right in a courtyard in favor of two other residents who did not establish an Eruv. Why you need a truth? That one of the people who have the ability to give these reshut, this right, he basically renounced for the other fellow, which means both his part and the other part are received from the other two. Mao de tema lishterelei, you may say that therefore you allow to carry in the yard to one who received, because all these houses belong to one person. Kamash Melan, it's come to teach us, kevan de ba'idana de batelo avishayuta ba'chatzerlo. It says, since at the time of his renunciation he was not permitted in that courtyard, so therefore he may not renounce his right in it, and carrying is prohibited for both. Now the last part, the conclusion, two residents who did not establish an Eruv renounced their right in the courtyard in favor of two residents who did establish an Eruv. So he said, why need the two? Because they what did they do? They said, acquire our rights in the courtyard on condition that you transfer them in turn to your friend and the other one who did not establish an Eruv. So anyway, this bitul, this renunciation, it's, as we said earlier, it's not effective. Be'amina Rava mi Rav Nachman. So Rava raised a question from Rav Nachman. If you have yoresh, yoresh is a heir, it's a person who inherits. Maushi batel reshut. Can someone who has a heir or has an inheritance can annul his right in if, for example, a person who is forgotten to establish an Eruv, he died on Shabbat. May his heir, whatever it is, can be son or anybody else who inherited him, renounce his right in his stead. So Tosfot here explains that he live at the same location, not he's live in a different domain. Page 70b. So now the Gemara explained the two sides of this question, which is heicha de'ibai la'aruv me'etmol matzeh me'arev batul le'matzeh mevatel, aval hai kevan de'ibai la'aruv me'etmol matzeh me'arev lo matzeh mevatel o dilma yoresh kare de'avuahu. Beautiful. He said here that there are two sides of the point. First, Rashi here used the word klomar, and he explained, okay, we don't have the time, but basically it's based on what the Tosfot said also, and the Ran said as well, that they are both, his father and son live in the same domain, and basically they establish a Eruv. Only the one who wants to make the Eruv before Shabbat, he can do the Eruv, so therefore he can also renounce his right on Shabbat. But this heir that he inherited this house only during Shabbat, because the other one passed during Shabbat, so if he wants to make the Eruv before Shabbat, he cannot make it, because this home and his part in the yard still not his. He did not inherit it yet. So therefore he cannot renounce over his right on Shabbat, one side. On the other hand, if you tell me that the heir is Karei de'avua is a Aramaic expression that said that it's like his father's feet, which means that he is a foot that is considered an extension his father and in a way substitute for him in all regards, which means that just his father could have renounced his right, so he can do it. So therefore he can do the bitul, the renunciation. It's fine. So Rav Nachman said, Amar lei, ani omer. I said, this her mevatel, that he can renounce his right in the yard that he inherited during Shabbat. V'hane devei Shmuel tanu, en mevatel. But student of the school of yeshiva of Shmuel teach that the heir cannot renounce his part during Shabbat. That's, by the way, it's a original machloket we discussed in page 67 between Rav Sheshet and Rav Amnuna. If you have a idolater and a fellow Jew that's living in the same yard, if you remember. Anyway, remember all discussion with Shmuel, etc. Based on that. Anyway, Eitivei. Rava asked Rav Nachman, Ze haklal. This is the general principle. Kol shemutar lemiktzat b'Shabbat. Any yard that you can carry at the beginning of Shabbat, hutar lechol haShabbat. So therefore, the entire Shabbat you can carry. V'chol shene'esar lemiktzat Shabbat. Whatever we forbid part of the Shabbat, ne'esar lekol haShabbat. You carry is forbidden for the entire Shabbat, which means that yard, the rule, it's not changed during Shabbat, regardless if it's a lenience or stringency, regardless is the same status. So Tosfot Rabbeinu Peretz elaborated that, and he said that even that the before Shabbat is the third person that is there, it still holds the same. Anyway, Chutz mi mevatel reshut. All of that apart from one who renounces his right in a courtyard, because the renunciation can provide an allowance halfway through Shabbat. Now we elaborate. Kol shutar lemiktzat Shabbat, mutar lechol haShabbat, whatever we allow to carry part of Shabbat, and now we allow entire Shabbat. Here is an example. Kegon eirav derech hapetach. For example, if an eruv was established between two courtyards that are connected to an opening between them, v'nistam hapetach, all of a sudden during Shabbat it was a mapolet, it was something that closed up during Shabbat, it was phenomena, whatever it is, building collapse, okay? Eirav derech halon, if they do it, establish an eruv between the two via a window opening from one to another, and then v'nistam halon, and the window was closed up on Shabbat, can be a million reasons why. It can be, for example, collapse of a building or other reasons. It's closed. So now, two yards can have together an eruv, even there is no crossway between them. But here, because in that circumstance, the people in the yard can carry from one domain to another, either to the small hall or by throwing objects, because originally speaking, before Shabbat, before that happened, you can carry. So that idea can continue even the circumstance change. Zeh haklal, this is the principle. Said la'atuyei mavoi shenitlu korotav o lechayav. That's come to include in a case an alleyway whose cross beam or side posts were removed on Shabbat. So anyway, you can use the alleyway as it had been permitted at the outset of Shabbat. Second part, kol shene'esar lemiktzat Shabbat ne'esar lechol Shabbat shula. Any chatzer, any yard that's forbidden for part of the Shabbat is already the entire Shabbat forbidden. Kegon shnei batim b'shnei tzedekot. That we discussed so many times. You have two houses in two parts of the public domain. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it was two houses and two sides of the public domain. We discussed it. If you want to see pictures, you see it in many pages earlier, in the 67, etc. And you have these idolaters that came in, or all kind of other people that build somehow a partition between the two domains within the public domain. So we said it's rabbinic law, you cannot carry there, because originally speaking, before Shabbat it wasn't that domain. So that doesn't make it Reshut HaYachid, a private domain in between. זה הכלל, להטויה מאי. So this principle, it works in the right form. להטויה, it's going to teach us that if there are two fellow Jews that live together with idolater in one domain, and they didn't make the Eruv, they didn't rent anything from him, but think what happened, met Nochri b'Shabbat, that fellow passed during Shabbat, so now they cannot annul the right from one another in order to allow to carry in that yard. Uktane chutz mimvatel reshut, Iruin yoresh lo. So he said he specifically cannot do, the one who renounces right, but that he can renounce his right on Shabbat because he owns that domain before Shabbat, but his heir is the one who inherited now because he didn't have that right before Shabbat. That's not according to Rav Nachman that said that heir can annul. So the Gemara responds, Eima, you have to say that this idea that part of the yard, that the yard forbidden before Shabbat is for the entire Shabbat, chutz mi Torat Reshut. That's apply to what? Apart from anyone who falls into the halachic category of one who renounces right in a domain. So it's not referring the Braita in a particular person who renounces right. It's a category of renunciation in general, which include the hair. So now we said 80. אחד מבני חצר שמת והניח רשותו לאחד מן השוק מבעוד יום. So if you have one fellow residents of a courtyard died and he left his domain to one just fellow from the marketplace, a fellow from the shuk, non-residents, and he did it while it was still day. So because that's basically stopped when he passed. So the hair oser that he prohibited, which assumed that he has received his portion before the onset on Shabbat, so he can join the Eruv with the other. So he basically failed to establish an Eruv with the other residents in the courtyard. So everything is forbidden. Then Mishachashecha, when after the nightfall, Eino Oser, but after the nightfall, this hair is not rendered carrying prohibited. Why? Because so long as it was permitted to carry for a part on Shabbat, it remains permitted for the entire of Shabbat. Ve'echad ben hashuk, and one for the marketplace, who owned a residence in a courtyard but did not dwell there, but he shemed, that he passed, v'niach reshuto le'echad b'nei hachatzer, but he left to one of the yard that he make the eruv properly. So if that person who left the inheritance mibe'od yom before Shabbat, so it means that his heir have enough time to make the eruv, eino oser, so the yard he can carry with his neighbor. Mishachashicha, when the night fall, oser, he forbidden. Amai oser, why? Nivatel, you may say that what we do, renounce his right in the courtyard to the other residents. That's the way the Rav Nachman maintained, that his heir may renounce his right. So Rav Nachman said, "Mai oser dekatani, na oser name dekatani ad shivater." What do you mean that is prohibited in a Braita? Teaches here that it means that carry prohibited until he renounce his right, which means although we cannot rectifying the situation, it will be corrected by a way of renunciation. Tashma, Israel וגר שגויים במגורה אחת ומת גרם בעוד יום. Here, if you have a situation that you have a convert and a Jew that were living in a single residency, so what's the issue? So the issue here that, as we said many times, that if he passed without a hair, so it's have care, everyone can take it. And now the situation is that he's umet ger mibod yom, that the convert died childless while he's still day, so you have no hair, and therefore the first to take the possession of his property is basically acquire it. Page 71, just several lines. אף על פי שיחזיק ישראל אחר בנכסיו אוסר. Even it's a different Jew took a possession of the convert property, he basically prohibited it. On the contrary, משכה שכה, but if he died after the nightfall, אף על פי שלא החזיק ישראל אחר אינו אוסר. Even though a different Jew did not take possession of the property, which means he not carry, it's not prohibited for carry, it's already been permitted to do on Shabbat. Now we're going to practical halachot. The Tur said in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 380, צריך לבטל לכל אחד ואחד. When one renounces his right in a certain domain to a group of people, he must do so in respect to each and every one of them by saying, my rights are renounced to you and to you. But that's the Rambam. The Tur said, he said, my rights are renounced to all of you. Now, as far as the Yachid Verabim Bebitul, a group of people who establish an Eruv can renounce their right in favor of another group who also establish an Eruv. But neither they nor an individual may do so in favor of a group that did not establish an Eruv. If the group renounces its right in favor of individual, or if individual does so for another individual, the renunciating party is entirely prohibited from carrying in a courtyard and is not considered in disregard like a guest who is subordinate to his host and may carry wherever they later may. So another thing we learn is about Yoresh. We learn that this is the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 381, and heir can also renounce right in a domain. That's basically what Nachman said. We establish also a question in regards to a situation of passing during Shabbat. We said one resident of a courtyard who died before he could establish an Eruv, and he left his portion to someone who was not a resident of the courtyard. So if he died before Shabbat and his hair arrived on Shabbat, the hair render carrying is prohibited. However, if he died on Shabbat after having established an Eruv, the hair may not impose any restrictions on the residents. If he had not established an Eruv, the hair imposes restriction only when he arrives. In the case of a person who owned a residence in the courtyard but did not dwell there, and who left his property to a resident of that courtyard, the halacha said that if he died before Shabbat, the hair does not render carrying prohibited. For the Eruv that he established before Shabbat includes the portion he has inherited as well. However, if the person died after nightfall, then the hair does render carrying prohibited because his Eruv is ineffective in such a case.